Okay, let's move on to aspartame then. So here it is. And of course, this is the artificial sweetener, which is in just about everything these days and has been for many years. Well, the World Health Organization and people will understand people's cynicism over that. But nonetheless, they have at least the International Agency for Research on Cancer is about to publish the results of two evaluations on the potential causation of cancer by aspartame. So just wanted to remind everybody how this particular artificial sweetener came about, because the story is very interesting. So let's just have a look at this. The product was accidentally discovered in 1965 by a scientist from Searle, the pharmaceutical company. He got some on a thumb or a finger and licked his finger and discovered how sweet it was. This sweetener was not the purpose of it, so that was forgotten about from 1965 until the late 70s, when the idea of artificial sweeteners was gaining traction in society, and Searle thought, well, hey, we've got a product which might work. But at the time, the Food and Drug Administration said no. They refused approval because it might induce brain tumors. So there's definitely consideration that there was a link to cancer at that time. But the famous Donald Rumsfeld rode to the rescue because he was the chairman of Searle at the time. He had not yet entered government, and he decided he would call in all his markers, as he described it at the time. And of course, those markers were called in just in time for Reagan to become president and for Donald Rumsfeld to be chosen to be part of Reagan's government. And Rumsfeld chose, in fact, who would sit in the transition administration as the members of the Food and Drug Administration panel would make the decision. And so Rumsfeld chose who would be the FDA chair, and the FDA then went ahead and approved aspartame, doing a 180-degree U-turn overnight, effectively. And then subsequently, several FDA staff left their posts within the FDA in the subsequent years and got new jobs at companies associated with aspartame. And just to give some impressions of this, Sherwin Gardner, for example, he signed to approve aspartame and then left to become vice president of the Grocery Manufacturers of America, which is a huge distributor of aspartame. Dr. Howard Roberts, he worked closely with the Public Board of Inquiry and left to become vice president for science and technology at the National Soft Drink Association. Stuart M. Pape, I guess it is, was special assistant to the FDA commissioner from 74 to 79, and then left to take a position with the law firm Patton, Biggs and Blow, a firm that worked closely with the National Soft Drink Association. Robert A. Domer worked as a trial attorney for the Health and Human Services and was involved in several cases related to aspartame. He then left to work for a law firm that provided legal advice to Searle. So it all worked very well. Donald Rumsfeld's absolutely key to getting the approval. But we've got to remember that the FDA then subsequently published this. Sugar substitutes, Americans opt for sweetness and light. And we just take a quick look at one paragraph from this. The aspartame controversy. While questions about saccharin may persist, the safety of another artificial sweetener, aspartame, is clear-cut, say FDA officials. FDA calls aspartame sold under trade names such as NutraSweet and Equal one of the most thoroughly tested and studied food additives the agency has ever approved. The agency says that more than 100 toxicological and clinical studies it has reviewed confirm that aspartame is safe for the general population. Now, that was published in 1999, but unfortunately that page no longer exists. So if you want to see that, you've got to go to the Wayback Machine. But very briefly, Patrick, I mean, obviously, in the meantime, this controversy over aspartame has rumbled on for 30 years, 40 years, and suddenly the World Health Organization is interested in it again. And it seems that those original suggestions of links to cancer, there might be something in them.
Yeah, the law firm you mentioned is Patton Boggs, and they just so happen to have been very instrumental in Iraq as well, along some of these other big establishment, deep state, beltway law firms. But high fructose corn syrup, aspartame, NutraSweet, The new one, I think, is called sucralose. Okay, all of these things are all artifacts of the Cold War. Is when the U.S. put an embargo on Cuba, they killed the sugarcane industry, and this is when industry, the petrochemical industry, and all the various chemical companies in the U.S. came up with all these new diet, sugar-free diet, low-fat, all these food substitutes for a cheaper, more practical substitute for actual sugar, and it took off, and they marketed a whole range of diet, sugar-free, etc. So this is, in some ways, the pretext for this was the Cold War, was the embargo of Cuba in the 1950s and 60s,
Yeah.
and so this is the legacy of this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's